It's time to start getting to work. The fun kind of work, though. This is going to be some work that makes money. So what I'm going to do is I want to show you now, I'm probably going to space this out over 2 videos so we can chunk it down. I want to show you how to make the pitch for whatever your liquidator offer is, right? And the reason we're going to make that now is because I want to help you come up with that pitch and create the pitch page, because we're going to use that pitch page as the thank you page for when people register for your webinar. And there's no point in building the registration funnel if we don't have that cornerstone, which is the thank you page. So that's why we're going to go ahead and do this first. I know it seems a little bit backwards, but we're kind of beginning with the end in mind, and therefore reverse engineering from what we need to be successful. So we know that if our webinar registration sequence should sell something and we want to try to turn a profit before the webinar even begins, well, that means that that cannot happen unless there is a sales pitch for something to be purchased immediately after registration. Therefore, we're going to build that now. So let's get jiggy. Now, I have gone ahead and concluded that some folks watching this might not yet know what to offer for their liquidator offer. So here's how you come up with it. First of all, I want to let you know we got some documents we're going to be working with in this one particular video. We're going to be working with a document called VSL Outline. I've included a download link to it under this video. Somewhere within this module you'll find it. And that's what this looks like. But before we go through it, I want to show you how to come up with an idea for what your quick liquidator offer is going to be. Now, if you remember, the rules of the liquidator offer state, hang on, let me pull this little guy up here. Where are you? My gosh, I have all of these documents open. Where'd you go there, buddy? No, hang on. There it is. If you remember, our rules for creating a liquidator offer, and this is what I taught you on the webinar that got you here, we want that liquidator offer to be something we can immediately offer to people who register for our webinar, and the rules around it are that it must complement the thing that we're selling on our webinar and not compete with it. Right? So in many of my webinars, as you probably saw when you registered for the one that got you here, I like to sell video, black box. And that's because the use of video sort of complements everything, right? If I'm doing a webinar about consulting clients, I can say, hey, one of the things that help me get consulting clients is using videos, and if you'd like to learn how to use videos, here's how you do it, and then I go into my pitch, right? I should have done so on the webinar, which is, hey, one of the things I use to get people to show up more for webinars, get people to register more for webinars, and get people to buy after webinars occur is videos, and let me show you how to make them, right? So we want to find something complementary. Now, if you don't have an idea, one thing to do is to simply look through your bag of tricks worksheet. Now, see, this is where this thing's starting to pay off. So usually, you have some sort of a situation and a solution that is complementary but not competing with the very thing you're selling. Sort of like that video example. So if we were selling how to convert more leads into subscribers, some sort of an email marketing course, a perfect complementary thing would be around the topic of how to build a list, right? So we might say, hey, thanks for registering for this webinar on email marketing. By the way, one of the things that make email marketing really, really work and lucrative is to have a constant flow of new email addresses that you can predictably turn into sales. That's why I'd like to offer you right now 4 easy ways to build a list, and let me tell you how they work, and blah, blah, blah. Now you go into your pitch, right? So if you don't know what to offer, have a look at this guy and just see something that jumps out at you as the most immediately relatable situation that they might be experiencing, and a solution that you can teach relatively quickly and easily for not too much money that's not going to totally cannibalize the thing that you sell on the webinar itself. Thing that could have worked as a liquidator offer to people who had just registered for the webinar that got you here, which is of course about doing successful webinars, might have been templates. Could have been a collection of landing page templates, right? That would have done very, very well. A simple one-time offer for $97 or something for a collection of 15 different split-tested landing page templates that are easy to edit and integrate with any type of service provider, right? So that's one idea that would have really, really worked that I got right here just by looking at my bag of tricks example worksheet that of course I gave to you in an earlier video. very, very effective tool just for getting ideas for liquidator offer concepts if you don't have an offer already. But let's assume that you do, because I know most people probably will have a good idea of what they want to offer. What I've got here is this document I just told you about. This is the VSL outline. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm giving you this outline, which we'll go over here in just a second. It's just the tips on exactly how to do this. And then in our next video, I'm going to walk you through an actual VSL that adheres to this outline. I'm also going to include that as a template deck of slides that you can use for your own VSL. VSL standing for Video Sales Letter. So as you can tell, it says please see larger template doc for examples. This is just the structural outline. So I wanted to give you the structure first, the framework, and then we'll decorate it, if you will, and make it a nice fancy house. So a good VSL has multiple parts. Part number one is the setup. And remember, this is happening right after they register for a webinar. So what you want to do on the landing page, and I'll go over this with you when we build your page, is first you want to acknowledge the fact they successfully registered so they won't be worried about it. And then you want to set up the rest of the video by framing it as a tutorial. So the way I like to do it is say, hey, grab a pen and piece of paper because I'm going to show you something really important that's going to help you X, Y, Z. Right? And then I'll give a countdown. And that's literally, I just have PowerPoint slides counting down from 5 to 1, and I just don't say anything while I click them. So it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we move to the next part of the VSL, and that is when we grab focus. You always want to direct someone's focus, and as I actually teach in the very video sales letter that I'm going to give you, which sold Video Black Box, one of the best ways to direct focus is by asking questions. When we ask a question, the brain cannot help but acknowledge it. It's just impossible to ignore a question. You can refuse to answer, you can pretend like you didn't hear it, but we can never ignore it. So our focus gets directed to the topic of that question whenever we're asked a question. So it's a great opener. So what I like to do is after I've told them to grab a pen, explain we're about to teach them stuff and they're going to learn something important and they know that they've registered for the webinar successfully, I then begin by painting a mental picture with an opening statement, which I always say, imagine this scenario. And then, strange as it may sound, this could be a little NLP, I'm not an expert in that, but strange as it may sound, I never describe a scenario. I go straight into asking questions. And I think, if you're an NLP expert or you know one, you might want to write me and explain to me why this works from a scientific perspective. I'll just give you the marketing perspective. What's happening when we say imagine this scenario is it causes them to start becoming reflective, and then when we go immediately into a question, we just take control of that focus and direct it. So imagine the scenario is almost like a pattern interrupt, which sort of puts them off balance mentally, and then when we ask that what if question, it directs the focus and makes it a lot easier for us to direct that focus. So what I do is I begin after the countdown, I say imagine the scenario. What if XYZ happened? And that XYZ is always around a result. So if we were doing a webinar on how to have a good relationship, I might say, imagine this scenario. What if you found yourself in a situation where every time you spoke to a woman you were attracted to, she was also attracted to you as well, hanging on your every word and incredibly interested in what you had to say? What would it be like if instead of being nervous about asking for their phone number or asking her out on a date, she actually asked you instead? And what would it be like if every date was comfortable and easy and you never felt intimidated, nervous, or shy again? Right? All of those questions actually are probably pretty far stretched, right, for some of us guys. I know I was like that single. I would have watched that VSL going, yeah, God, that'd be amazing, right? So what all of those questions do is cause us to picture in our mind that outcome. And these are all outcomes that we're going to talk about in the rest of the video sales letter. That's why we make those questions result-oriented. You can have like 2 or 3 of them. You don't need a million questions or anything like that. We just want to direct that focus and set the tone for the rest of the video. Now, the next part is where we address skepticism. Now, we don't have to go into as great of a detail about this as we do on your webinar presentation, but we do need to address it. Otherwise, it's going to be running in the back of their mind like a program on your computer that's eating up all the RAM memory, right? So the way I usually do it is I'll say something like, sound like a stretch, or sound too good to be true, or sound like a bunch of hype, and then I go straight into the feel, felt, found formula, which is, I used to feel the same way. Actually, I'm sorry, is I know exactly how you feel. I used to feel the same way until it happened to me, or until I found this unique system that I'm going to share with you right now, or something like that. It's really, really simple. You don't need to go into a great bit of detail around it. In our next video, I'm going to walk you through an actual VSL. I just want to give you the framework right now. But that's how this works in part 3. This is usually like 2 or 3 slides. Not really very complicated at all. Now our next phase here is part 4. And that's what I call the reveal. And in part 4, we sort of set the tone for what we're going to be teaching them in this webinar. So it's a precursor to the actual training, right? So you say something like, I know how you feel. I used to feel, let me begin again. I know exactly how you feel. I felt the same way until I discovered an incredible system that has allowed me to consistently make sales day in and day out through the use of video, without being hypey and by actually helping people while I'm selling them. It's called video NLP, and here's how it works. So when I say it's called video NLP, even though that's a bit of a stretch because I don't actually know via NLP, although people like to say that I do, that's kind of funny. It's flattering, I guess. Anyway, that discovery there, when I say it's called XYZ, that's the discovery. That's when you sort of reveal the main thing that has helped you around this topic that you'll be discussing. Right? Now, please, I've put it here and I can't say it enough, please be 100% truthful. Don't make up stories and, say your stuff is better than it is. The truth always works really, really well. And hey, by the way, if it doesn't solve all problems, address those in the skepticism. Right? So if whatever you're selling, if I've said something, like if a legitimate skepticism was, well, I'm mute, how can I use videos? I know that's kind of extreme, right? But I want to make a pretty good example here. Then let's say a large segment of my market for some reason was mute, right, and couldn't use videos. Then I would say something like, this has worked really, really well for me. In fact, it's worked so well that I thought it was a magic solution, but upon further discovery, I did discover some circumstances where it wouldn't work. So if you're mute, for example, making videos is probably not going to be for you. But if you XYZ, then you really need to pay attention, right? So please be very truthful and have this be a shenanigans-free zone. Now, this little part 4 right here, again, just another like 2 or 3 slides. No big deal. Now is when we get into the meat. So if we were to be timing this right now in an actual VSL, we might be in minute 2, maybe. If it had even taken that long to get into this part, right? So all of this is happening really, really quickly. Part 5, however, is a lot longer. This is the tutorial. This is where we actually begin teaching as a means to demonstrate you can help them by actually helping them. And usually I like to teach 3 big picture things that help them get to the result that they're after. So I want them to watch this pitch, and even if they don't buy, I want them to come away from it feeling like they've really learned something. And there's 2 reasons for that. There's actually 3. Number 1, I feel it sells better than just pure hype. It leads to a happier customer. It attracts a better buyers. That's reason number 1. Number 2 is it is easier on me for my psyche. I just don't like to be an asshole, and I like to maintain that goodwill, and I genuinely like to help people, and they respond to it. And reason number 3 is we want to maintain goodwill throughout the entire webinar experience. And what I'm showing you in this class is not just how to do a webinar, but how to do an entire webinar campaign. See, many people think that a webinar is just a one-time thing, like just the webinar itself. Well, what we're going to discover and what you're learning right now is that the webinar has 5 major pillars, right? There's the recon, there is the registration, there's the indoctrination, there's the reminder, there's the webinar itself, and then there's the post-webinar, right? And all of those make up one singular campaign. So if we kind of screw up here in our liquidator offer and just hype them up and don't give them any value, they're not going to show up on our webinar, and then we would be cannibalizing attendance. So that's why we want this tutorial to be very, very good, right? And we do it by showing a big picture and not bogging them down, okay? So, and I'll show you an example here in our next video when I walk through an actual VSL. And part number 6, finally, is the offer. And this offer, you don't have to be as extreme as you do in your webinar offer with all those 12 steps I'm going to show you. This one is pretty simple. You can use the classic 3-step John Carlton formula that I learned from him, where he said, Frank, here's what you got to do. You say, here's what I got, here's what it'll do for you, here's what I want you to do next. And that really works well. It's just a great way to introduce what you have. And a good transition, by the way, is to say, what I just gave you is an overview of this exact same system I use to blank. Let's say, to find the love of my life, right? And now that you know what to do, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. It's called Boom, and then we introduce the product. I'll go on with part 6 of the offer here. We introduce the product, and then we describe the components and benefits. So if we were selling a multi-modulated course, for example, we'd say in module number 1, you're going to learn five ways to start a conversation with a woman that doesn't make you sound creepy, so you can always be confident that when you go up to approach a beautiful lady, she's going to be receptive to you and you won't feel weird. Now notice I use that "so you can." Remember we talked about that earlier? It's a great way to further hammer home the benefit of what you got right there. The next part of the offer is to give the price. So hey, you can have it today for XYZ. The next part is to give the call to action. The next part is to give the guarantee. And of course, you also want to end with giving the deadline. And that's pretty simple because if this is a one-time offer immediately after registration, you can actually say, listen, this usually costs $7 million. Of course, I don't actually want you to say anything like that unless it really does cost $7 million. You can say, listen, this usually costs $97. You can have it for 75% off right now as a special marketing test exclusively available to people who have registered for this webinar. I want you to understand, though, I will not be displaying this offer again. This is only available to you right now. So whether or not you decide to choose it, I wish you the best of luck. But if you want this, I can promise you one thing, you will never see it at this low of a price again. So once this video is over, the offer has expired, right? So that's a great way to do it. And of course, it's logical because they're right there on a one-time offer page. Now, if you want to get fancy, and I'll show you how I do it, you can then begin to tell a story about how you use your product to get a specific benefit at this stage. And in the template that I'm about to give you, I show you how I do it on slide 86. We're going to do that right now. The reason you might want to do this is because it allows you to have the buy button in front of the viewer longer. It allows you to continue building that desire, right? So what I've done right now is I've just gone through and explained this outline that hopefully you've downloaded or you will download right after this video is finished. I'm going to wrap this video up. We've kept it short and sweet, and then in the next video we're going to go through the actual example, which is like 100-something slides, give or take, and I won't make you go through all 100 of them, of course. I just want to show you how the thing is structured. That way you can start to model a winning formula for a video sales letter that works in a liquidation offer environment. Okay, boom. So there's nothing for you to do right now other than download this sucker. Just have it open on your computer and then proceed to the next video and we'll get on it. Okay, I'll see you there.